Question 1. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a new web-based application is being developed for internal use. Before deployment, what is the most critical step to ensure its integration does not compromise the organization's network security, particularly concerning the Cisco ASA firewall's established security policies and threat mitigation capabilities? Option A. Prioritize the application's user interface and functionality during development, assuming the existing ASA firewall will automatically block any unauthorized access. Option B. Implement the application and then conduct a post-deployment security audit to identify any vulnerabilities that may have been introduced. Option C. Deploy the application immediately and rely on the ASA's logging features to detect any potential security anomalies or policy violations after it goes live. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to analyze the application's traffic patterns, data handling, and interaction with existing ASA security policies, ACL, and IPS configurations. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to analyze the application's traffic patterns, data handling, and interaction with existing ASA security policies, ACL, and IPS configurations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT security where a new application is being introduced, and its potential impact on existing security controls and overall system integrity needs to be evaluated. The challenge lies in balancing the benefits of the new application with the risks it might introduce, ensuring that the organization's security posture is not compromised. This requires a thorough understanding of the application's functionality, its data handling practices, and its interaction with the network infrastructure, particularly in the context of a Cisco ASA firewall. The professional must exercise careful judgment to identify potential vulnerabilities and ensure compliance with established security policies and regulatory requirements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that specifically examines how the new application will interact with the Cisco ASA firewall's security policies, access control lists, ACL, intrusion prevention system, IPS, signature, and VPN configurations. This includes analyzing the application's traffic patterns, required ports and protocols, and any potential for it to bypass or weaken existing security measures. The assessment should also consider the application's data sensitivity and how it will be protected in transit and at rest, aligning with the principles of data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This proactive evaluation ensures that the ASA's security posture remains robust and that the new application is integrated in a secure and compliant manner, adhering to best practices for network security and risk management. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the application without a thorough impact assessment, assuming existing security controls are sufficient, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach ignores the fundamental principle of risk management, which mandates proactive identification and mitigation of potential threats. It could lead to the introduction of new vulnerabilities that are not covered by current ASA configurations, potentially resulting in security breaches and non-compliance with data protection regulations. Deploying the application and then monitoring for security incidents, rather than conducting a pre-implementation assessment, is also a flawed approach. This reactive strategy is less effective and more costly than a proactive one. It increases the likelihood of a security incident occurring before any mitigation can be put in place, leading to potential data loss, service disruption, and reputational damage. This failure to anticipate and prevent risks is a breach of professional duty and regulatory expectations for due diligence. Focusing solely on the application's functionality and user experience without considering its security implications is another critical failure. While user experience is important, it cannot supersede the organization's security obligations. This narrow focus neglects the potential for the application to introduce security risks, such as insecure data transmission or susceptibility to common web vulnerabilities, which could be exploited through the network perimeter protected by the ASA. This oversight demonstrates a lack of understanding of the interconnectedness of application security and network security. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to security. This involves understanding the organization's threat landscape, identifying critical assets, and evaluating potential threats and vulnerabilities. When introducing new technologies like applications, a structured impact assessment is crucial. This assessment should involve stakeholders from IT security, application development, and relevant business units. The process should include identifying the application's dependencies, data flows, and potential attack vectors. Based on the assessment, appropriate security controls should be designed and implemented, and existing controls, such as those managed by the Cisco ASA, should be reviewed and updated as necessary. Continuous monitoring and regular reassessment of security posture are also vital components of a robust security program. Question 2. System analysis indicates that a new customer-facing web application is planned for deployment, which will require inbound and outbound communication through the existing Cisco ASA firewall. To ensure business continuity and rapid deployment, what is the most appropriate approach to configuring the ASA to support this new application? Option A. Deploy the application immediately and assume the current firewall configuration is adequate, deferring any specific security reviews until a later date. Option B. Implement a broad firewall rule allowing all inbound and outbound traffic from the subnet where the new application will reside to minimize configuration complexity. Option C. Apply a default allow policy for all traffic originating from the new application servers to the internet, and a default deny policy for all other inbound traffic. Option D. Conduct a detailed impact assessment to identify all necessary ports, protocols, and traffic flows for the application, and then configure granular firewall rules based on the principle of least privilege. Correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed impact assessment to identify all necessary ports, protocols, and traffic flows for the application, and then configure granular firewall rules based on the principle of least privilege. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, evaluating the potential impact of a new service deployment on an existing Cisco ASA firewall. The professional must balance the need for business functionality with the imperative to maintain security posture and compliance. The challenge lies in anticipating unforeseen vulnerabilities and ensuring that the new service does not inadvertently expose the network to risks that could lead to data breaches, service disruptions, or regulatory noncompliance. The pressure to enable new business capabilities quickly can sometimes lead to rushed assessments, increasing the likelihood of overlooking critical security implications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that meticulously analyzes the new service's traffic patterns, protocols, and potential interactions with existing security policies. This includes identifying all necessary ports and protocols, understanding the data flow, and evaluating the sensitivity of the data being transmitted. This thorough analysis ensures that firewall rules are configured precisely to permit only legitimate traffic, minimizing the attack surface. This aligns with best practices for network security and regulatory frameworks that mandate risk-based security controls and the principle of least privilege. By understanding the specific requirements of the service and how they map to the ASA's capabilities, security professionals can implement effective and compliant security measures. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the new service without a formal impact assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses essential risk management processes, potentially violating regulations that require due diligence in deploying new technologies. This approach is akin to opening a door without checking for threats, directly contravening the principle of proactive security. Applying a broad, overly permissive firewall rule, e.g., allowing all traffic from the new service's subnet, is another critical failure. This creates a wide-open pathway for potential attackers, violating the principle of least privilege and significantly increasing the attack surface. Such a lax approach can lead to severe security incidents, data breaches, and non-compliance with data protection regulations. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of secure network segmentation and access control. Assuming the existing firewall configuration is sufficient without any review is also professionally unacceptable. Security is not static. New services introduce new risks. This assumption ignores the dynamic nature of threats, and the need for continuous security evaluation can lead to the exploitation of previously unknown vulnerabilities or misconfigurations, resulting in security breaches and regulatory penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk assessment methodology. This involves identifying the asset, the new service, understanding its function and data flow, identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, analyzing the likelihood and impact of those threats, and implementing appropriate controls. For Cisco ASA deployments, this translates to a detailed review of the service's network requirements, mapping these to specific, granular firewall rules. The process should involve collaboration with the business unit deploying the service to understand its operational needs and with the security team to ensure robust protection. Regular audits and reviews of firewall configurations are also crucial to maintain an effective security posture. Question 3. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a new cloud-based collaboration service is being considered for deployment. Which of the following approaches best ensures that the integration of this service does not compromise the organization's existing security posture, particularly concerning the controls managed by the Cisco ASA? Option A. Focus the impact assessment solely on the service's performance and user experience, with a cursory review of its network connectivity to the Internet. Option B. Proceed with the deployment and address any security issues that arise after the service is operational, relying on the existing firewall rules of the Cisco ASA to provide baseline protection. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the service's data handling, authentication, integration with existing network infrastructure, and potential effects on the Cisco ASA's security policies and configurations. Option D. Implement the new service with minimal security review, assuming that the cloud provider's inherent security measures are sufficient to protect the organization's data and network. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the service's data handling, authentication, integration with existing network infrastructure, and potential effects on the Cisco ASA's security policies and configurations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity where a new service is being introduced, and its potential impact on existing security controls needs to be evaluated. The challenge lies in balancing the benefits of the new service with the risks it introduces, ensuring that the organization's security posture is not compromised. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to identify vulnerabilities, assess the severity of potential threats, and determine the necessary mitigation strategies before deployment. Failure to do so can lead to security breaches, data loss, and regulatory noncompliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive impact assessment that considers all relevant security domains. This includes evaluating the new service's integration with existing network infrastructure, its data handling practices, authentication and authorization mechanisms, and its susceptibility to common attack vectors. The assessment should also consider the potential impact on business continuity and disaster recovery plans. This aligns with best practices in risk management and cybersecurity, which emphasize proactive identification and mitigation of risks. Specifically, within the context of Cisco ASA Express Security, this approach would involve understanding how the new service might interact with firewall rules, VPN configurations, intrusion prevention systems, IPS, and logging mechanisms managed by the ASA. The goal is to ensure that the ASA's security policies are adequately updated or extended to cover the new service, maintaining the overall security perimeter. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to assume that the existing security controls are sufficient without a formal assessment. This is a failure of due diligence and directly contravenes the principles of proactive risk management. It ignores the possibility that the new service might introduce new attack surfaces or bypass existing security measures, leading to potential security incidents. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of responsibility in safeguarding organizational assets and data. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the functional requirements of the new service and defer security considerations to a later stage. This security as an afterthought mentality is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Many cybersecurity frameworks and regulations mandate that security be integrated into the design and development lifecycle. Delaying security assessments increases the likelihood of vulnerabilities being embedded in the system, making them harder and more costly to remediate. A third incorrect approach would be to conduct a superficial assessment that only examines a limited scope of the new service's impact, such as its direct network connectivity. This is inadequate because it fails to consider indirect impacts, such as the service's data dependencies, its potential to be used as a pivot point for lateral movement within the network, or its compliance with data privacy regulations. Such a narrow focus can lead to blind spots in the security posture, leaving the organization vulnerable to sophisticated attacks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk management framework. This involves identifying assets, threats, and vulnerabilities, analyzing the likelihood and impact of potential incidents, and implementing appropriate controls. For new service deployments, this translates to a mandatory impact assessment phase. This phase should be iterative and involve stakeholders from IT security, operations, and the business units responsible for the new service. The decision-making process should prioritize the protection of sensitive data and the integrity of the network infrastructure, ensuring compliance with relevant security standards and regulations. When dealing with Cisco ASA Express Security, this means understanding the specific capabilities and limitations of the ASA in securing the new service and making informed decisions about configuration changes, policy updates, and potential additional security measures. Question 4. Compliance review shows that a proposed network segmentation strategy for the Cisco ASA firewall aims to isolate critical financial data servers from the general user network. However, the implementation team has not conducted a formal impact assessment to identify potential disruptions to existing application dependencies or user access. Which of the following actions best addresses this compliance gap and ensures responsible implementation? Option A. Implement the segmentation on a non-critical segment first to test its functionality without assessing the broader impact on the financial data servers. Option B. Document the proposed segmentation in the change management system and proceed with the implementation, relying on existing network monitoring tools to detect any problems. Option C. Proceed with the network segmentation as planned, assuming that any issues will be addressed reactively once they arise. Option D. Halt the implementation and conduct a comprehensive impact assessment involving relevant business units and IT operations to identify and mitigate potential risks before proceeding. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the network segmentation as planned, assuming that any issues will be addressed reactively once they arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT security, balancing operational needs with the imperative to understand the potential impact of security changes. The core difficulty lies in the potential for unforeseen consequences of implementing new security controls, which could disrupt critical business functions or introduce new vulnerabilities. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to mitigate these risks proactively. The correct approach, which involves a systematic evaluation of potential consequences before implementation, represents best professional practice because it aligns directly with the principles of risk management and due diligence mandated by regulatory frameworks governing data security and operational continuity. Specifically, it demonstrates a commitment to understanding and mitigating potential adverse effects on business operations, data integrity, and confidentiality, thereby preventing regulatory noncompliance and reputational damage. This proactive stance ensures that security enhancements are implemented in a controlled and informed manner. An incorrect approach that bypasses a formal impact assessment, even with good intentions, carries significant regulatory and ethical risks. It suggests a disregard for established security protocols and a failure to exercise due diligence. This can lead to violations of data protection regulations, e.g., by inadvertently exposing sensitive data or disrupting access to critical systems, breaches of service-level agreements, and a general erosion of trust with stakeholders. Ethically, it represents a failure to adequately protect the organization's assets and operational integrity. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes a structured impact assessment for any proposed security change. This involves identifying all affected systems and processes, engaging relevant stakeholders, including IT operations, business units, and compliance officers, documenting potential risks and benefits, and developing contingency plans. The assessment should be iterative, allowing for adjustments to the proposed changes based on the findings. This methodical approach ensures that security decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with both business objectives and regulatory requirements. Question 5. Governance review demonstrates that a specific non-critical feature within the Cisco ASA firewall configuration is enabled, which, according to a recent security advisory, has a theoretical vulnerability. The advisory suggests that exploitation is complex and requires specific network conditions, making it a low-probability, low-impact event in the current environment. However, the advisory also recommends disabling the feature as a precautionary measure, What is the most appropriate next step to address this finding? Option A. Conduct a formal impact assessment to understand the operational and business implications of disabling the feature, and if the impact is minimal, proceed with disabling it. Option B. Document the finding and accept the risk, as the probability and impact are assessed as low. Option C. Escalate the issue to the vendor for a patch without further internal assessment. Option D. Immediately disable the feature to eliminate the theoretical vulnerability, regardless of potential operational impact. Correct answer is A. Conduct a formal impact assessment to understand the operational and business implications of disabling the feature, and if the impact is minimal, proceed with disabling it. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT security, balancing operational efficiency with the need for robust security controls. The governance review has identified a potential gap, and the task is to determine the most appropriate next step. The professional challenge lies in understanding the implications of the identified risk and selecting a course of action that is both effective and compliant with the relevant regulatory framework. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding of the potential impact before implementing any changes. This aligns with the principles of risk management and due diligence, which are fundamental to maintaining a secure and compliant IT environment. Specifically, conducting a formal impact assessment ensures that the organization understands the potential consequences of the identified vulnerability, allowing for informed decision-making regarding mitigation strategies. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of unintended consequences and ensures that resources are allocated effectively to address the most critical threats. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling the feature without further analysis fails to consider the potential business impact. This could lead to operational disruptions, loss of productivity, and potentially violate service-level agreements or business requirements. From a regulatory perspective, a hasty decision without proper assessment could be seen as a failure to conduct due diligence, potentially leading to non-compliance if the feature was essential for a regulated business process. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the finding due to its low perceived risk, is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This demonstrates a disregard for established governance processes and a failure to adhere to the principle of continuous improvement in security. Relying on subjective perception of risk, rather than a structured assessment, opens the organization to significant vulnerabilities and potential breaches. This could result in severe penalties if a security incident occurs, and it is found that a known risk was not adequately addressed. The professional decision-making process in such situation should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying the asset or process at risk, understanding the potential threats and vulnerabilities, and then evaluating the likelihood and impact of a successful exploit. Based on this assessment, appropriate mitigation strategies can be developed and implemented, followed by ongoing monitoring and review. This systematic approach ensures that security decisions are data-driven, aligned with business objectives, and compliant with regulatory requirements. Question 6. The performance metrics show a sustained increase in inbound traffic volume to the Cisco ASA firewall, accompanied by a slight rise in CPU utilization. There are no immediate alerts from the intrusion prevention system, IPS, module configured on the ASA. What is the most appropriate next step for the security analyst to take? Option A. Immediately implement a strict access control list, ACL, to block all inbound traffic from the top 100 source IP addresses exhibiting the highest traffic volume to mitigate a potential denial of service attack. Option B. Focus solely on reviewing the Cisco ASA's internal CPU utilization logs to determine if the hardware is under duress and consider a hardware upgrade if the trend continues. Option C. Assume the increased traffic is legitimate and due to normal network activity and continue monitoring without further investigation, as the IPS has not triggered any alerts. Option D. Analyze detailed traffic logs on the Cisco ASA to identify the source IP addresses, destination ports, and protocols of the increased traffic, and correlate this with recent threat intelligence feeds for any known malicious patterns. Correct answer is D. Analyze detailed traffic logs on the Cisco ASA to identify the source IP addresses, destination ports, and protocols of the increased traffic, and correlate this with recent threat intelligence feeds for any known malicious patterns. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security operations, interpreting performance data to diagnose and resolve security-related issues. The difficulty lies in distinguishing between normal network fluctuations and indicators of a potential security incident, especially when multiple factors could be contributing to the observed behavior. A rushed or misinformed decision can lead to either a missed security threat or unnecessary disruption of legitimate network traffic, both of which have significant operational and potentially regulatory implications. The need for a systematic, evidence-based approach is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multifaceted investigation that prioritizes correlating the observed performance metrics with known security events and threat intelligence. This aligns with best practices for incident response and security monitoring, which emphasize verification and contextualization before taking drastic action. By examining logs for specific attack signatures, analyzing traffic patterns for anomalies indicative of reconnaissance or exploitation, and cross-referencing with threat intelligence feeds, security professionals can build a comprehensive understanding of the situation. This methodical process ensures that actions taken are proportionate to the identified risk and are supported by concrete evidence, thereby minimizing the likelihood of false positives and maintaining network integrity. This approach is implicitly supported by general cybersecurity principles that advocate for a structured incident response lifecycle, including detection, analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately assume a denial of service, DoS, attack and initiate aggressive blocking rules based solely on increased traffic volume. This fails to account for legitimate traffic surges, such as during promotional events or unexpected user activity, which could be misidentified as malicious. Such an action could lead to the unwarranted blocking of legitimate users and services, causing significant business disruption and potentially violating service-level agreements or customer trust. This approach lacks the necessary verification and analysis steps, leading to an overreaction. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the performance metrics as mere network congestion without further investigation. This overlooks the possibility that the increased traffic is a byproduct of a sophisticated attack that is designed to blend in with normal traffic or to overwhelm resources as a secondary effect. Ignoring potential security threats can lead to a delayed or missed incident response, allowing an attacker to gain a foothold, exfiltrate data, or cause further damage. This approach represents a failure in due diligence and proactive security monitoring. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on the Cisco ASA device's internal logs without considering external factors or broader network context. While ASA logs are crucial, they are only one piece of the puzzle. A security incident might manifest in ways that are not fully captured by the ASA alone, such as an attack originating from within the network or a distributed attack involving multiple entry points. Failing to correlate ASA data with other security tools, network device logs, or endpoint telemetry can lead to an incomplete understanding of the threat and an ineffective response. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework. When performance metrics indicate unusual activity, the first step is always to gather more information and context. This involves checking for known events, reviewing security alerts from other systems, and examining detailed logs from relevant devices. The goal is to form a hypothesis about the cause of the anomaly and then seek evidence to confirm or refute it. If a security incident is suspected, the response should be phased, starting with less disruptive measures like enhanced monitoring and analysis, and escalating to containment and blocking only when sufficient evidence of a credible threat is established. This iterative process of investigation, analysis, and informed decision-making is crucial for effective cybersecurity management. Question 7. The performance metrics show a sustained increase in CPU utilization and network traffic volume on the Cisco ASA firewall, coinciding with a reported slowdown in application responsiveness for several key business services. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the security administrator? Option A. Immediately initiate a network-wide bandwidth upgrade to accommodate the increased traffic volume. Option B. Temporarily disable non-essential firewall services to reduce the load and observe performance changes. Option C. Analyze firewall logs for suspicious connection patterns, unauthorized access attempts, or policy violations that correlate with the performance spike. Option D. Ignore the performance metrics, assuming they are temporary fluctuations and will resolve on their own. The correct answer is C. Analyze firewall logs for suspicious connection patterns, unauthorized access attempts, or policy violations that correlate with the performance spike. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security operations, interpreting performance data in the context of security policy and potential threats. The challenge lies in distinguishing between legitimate network traffic that might be resource-intensive and malicious activity that mimics high usage. A security professional must balance the need to maintain network availability and performance with the imperative to detect and mitigate security risks. Overreacting to performance spikes can lead to unnecessary disruption and false positives, while underreacting can allow a security incident to escalate. The specific context of the Cisco ASA Express security exam implies a focus on practical, real-world application of security principles within a Cisco environment, adhering to industry best practices and potentially implied regulatory compliance for network security. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation that prioritizes security implications. This means correlating the observed performance metrics with known security events, threat intelligence, and the established security policy. By examining logs for suspicious connection attempts, unauthorized access patterns, or policy violations that coincide with the performance spikes, the professional can determine if the issue is security-related. This aligns with best practices for incident response and security monitoring, which emphasize evidence-based analysis and adherence to predefined security protocols. Such a methodical approach ensures that security resources are focused on genuine threats, minimizing disruption to legitimate operations, and fulfilling the implicit duty of care to protect the network. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately assume the performance issue is solely a capacity problem and initiate a broad network upgrade without investigating the root cause. This fails to consider the possibility of a security incident, such as a denial of service (DoS) attack or a compromised system generating excessive traffic. Ethically and professionally, this overlooks the primary security function of the ASA device. Another incorrect approach is to simply ignore the performance metrics, assuming they are transient anomalies. This is a critical failure in proactive security management. It neglects the responsibility to monitor network health and security posture, potentially allowing a minor security event to evolve into a major breach. This approach violates the principle of due diligence in cybersecurity. A third incorrect approach might be to implement overly restrictive firewall rules based solely on the performance spike, without understanding the traffic patterns. This could inadvertently block legitimate business traffic, impacting operations and potentially violating service-level agreements or internal policies. It demonstrates a lack of analytical rigor and a reactive, rather than a strategic, security response. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first establishing a baseline of normal network behavior. When deviations occur, the decision-making process should involve 1. Data correlation, cross-referencing performance metrics with security logs, traffic analysis tools, and threat intelligence feeds. 2. Hypothesis generation, formulating potential explanations for the performance anomaly, including both operational and security-related causes. 3. Targeted investigation, focusing investigative efforts on the most probable hypotheses, starting with security concerns due to the nature of the ASA's role. 4. Risk assessment, evaluating the potential impact of both security threats and proposed solutions on network operations and business continuity. 5. Action and documentation, implementing appropriate remediation steps based on the investigation and thoroughly documenting the process, findings, and actions taken. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, effective, and defensible. Question 8. Stakeholder feedback indicates that the current network segmentation strategy on the Cisco ASA firewall is perceived as overly restrictive, impacting the productivity of several key business units. While the intention was to create a secure environment, some users report significant delays and inability to access necessary internal resources. The security team is tasked with reviewing and potentially adjusting the firewall rules. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while maintaining a strong security posture and adhering to best practices for network security management? Option A. Implement a broad, network-wide policy to block all non-essential ports and protocols, assuming that any traffic not explicitly permitted is a potential security risk, and instruct users to submit formal requests for any exceptions. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify critical assets, sensitive data flows, and the specific business functions impacted by the current restrictions. Based on this assessment, refine firewall rules to allow necessary traffic for legitimate business operations while maintaining strict controls on unauthorized access. Option C. Immediately loosen all inbound and outbound access control lists, ACL, across the board to alleviate user complaints and improve network performance, deferring a detailed review until a later date. Option D. Focus on increasing the bandwidth of the internet connection to mitigate perceived performance issues, without altering the existing firewall rule set, as the current rules are considered to be robust. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify critical assets, sensitive data flows, and the specific business functions impacted by the current restrictions. Based on this assessment, refine firewall rules to allow necessary traffic for legitimate business operations while maintaining strict controls on unauthorized access. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining robust security posture and ensuring user accessibility, especially when dealing with potentially sensitive data. The need to balance these competing demands requires careful judgment and adherence to established security principles and, where applicable, regulatory frameworks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology by first identifying critical assets and then implementing appropriate security controls. It aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth. This proactive stance minimizes the attack surface and ensures that security measures are proportionate to the identified risks, thereby meeting the spirit and letter of security best practices, often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory guidelines that mandate data protection and risk management. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on broad, blanket restrictions without understanding the specific data flows or user needs is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to unnecessary operational friction, hinder legitimate business processes, and potentially violate principles of proportionality and necessity, often found in data protection regulations. Such an approach fails to demonstrate due diligence in understanding the impact of security decisions. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing security measures based on anecdotal evidence or without a clear understanding of the underlying threat landscape is also professionally unsound. This can result in misallocated resources, ineffective security controls, and a false sense of security. It demonstrates a lack of analytical rigor and a failure to adhere to evidence-based security practices. Finally, an approach that bypasses established change management and security review processes to implement quick fixes is highly problematic. This introduces significant risk by potentially creating vulnerabilities or misconfigurations without proper testing or oversight. It undermines the integrity of the security program and can lead to compliance failures if these ad hoc changes inadvertently violate regulatory requirements. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment. This includes identifying assets, threats, vulnerabilities, and potential impacts. Based on this assessment, security controls should be selected and implemented in a phased manner, with clear justification and documentation. Regular review and adaptation of security measures are crucial to maintain effectiveness and compliance. Collaboration with stakeholders to understand their needs and the impact of security decisions is also paramount. Question 9. The control framework reveals that a new business initiative requires the rapid deployment of a critical application, necessitating immediate changes to the Cisco ASA's access control lists, ACL, to permit specific traffic flows. The IT security team is under pressure to enable this service within a tight deadline. Which of the following approaches best aligns with maintaining a secure and compliant posture while facilitating the business requirement? Option A. Modify the ASA's security policies based on informal verbal requests from the business team, prioritizing speed of deployment over formal documentation and technical validation. Option B. Apply a broad, allow all rule for the traffic associated with the new application to simplify the configuration and guarantee connectivity, addressing specific security concerns later. Option C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the proposed ACL changes, validate them against existing security policies and relevant regulatory guidelines, and document the rationale for implementation. Option D. Immediately implement the ACL changes as requested by the business unit to ensure the new service is operational by the deadline, deferring any security review until after deployment. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the proposed ACL changes, validate them against existing security policies and relevant regulatory guidelines, and document the rationale for implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of a dynamic business environment. The challenge lies in ensuring that security policies, specifically those related to access control and traffic filtering on the Cisco ASA, are not only technically sound, but also align with evolving business needs and regulatory compliance without introducing undue risk or operational friction. The pressure to quickly enable new services while maintaining security posture requires a methodical and risk-aware approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured process of risk assessment and policy validation. For implementing changes to the ASA's access control lists, ACL, or security policies, a thorough review of the proposed changes against existing security policies and relevant regulatory requirements is paramount. This includes understanding the business justification for the new service, identifying potential security implications, and ensuring that the proposed ASA configuration adheres to the principle of least privilege. Documenting these steps, including the risk assessment and the rationale for any deviations or exceptions, is crucial for auditability and demonstrating due diligence. This aligns with best practices in information security management and regulatory compliance, which emphasize proactive risk management and adherence to established control frameworks. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing changes without a formal risk assessment or validation against security policies is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach bypasses critical security gates, potentially introducing vulnerabilities that could be exploited. It demonstrates a disregard for established security governance and could lead to non-compliance with regulations that mandate risk management and change control. Applying a blanket, allow all rule to expedite service deployment is a severe security misstep. This directly violates the principle of least privilege, opening the network to unauthorized access and potential data breaches. From a regulatory standpoint, this action would likely contravene data protection laws and industry-specific compliance mandates that require stringent access controls. Modifying security policies based solely on informal requests from business units without proper documentation or technical validation is also problematic. This ad hoc approach undermines the integrity of the security control framework. It creates an environment where security decisions are driven by expediency rather than by a comprehensive understanding of risks and compliance obligations, leading to potential security gaps and audit failures. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with such situations should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Understanding the business need. Clearly define the purpose and requirements of the new service. 2. Security impact assessment. Analyze how the new service and its associated network traffic will affect the existing security posture. 3. Policy alignment. Evaluate the proposed changes against current security policies and relevant regulatory requirements. 4. Risk mitigation. Identify potential risks and develop strategies to mitigate them, which may include specific ASA configurations or alternative security controls. 5. Change management. Follow a formal change management process, including documentation, review, and approval. 6. Implementation and verification. Deploy changes methodically and verify their effectiveness and compliance. 7. Continuous monitoring. Regularly review and audit security configurations and logs. Question 10. The risk matrix shows a critical vulnerability identified in the Cisco ASA Firewall's VPN termination module, which is actively being exploited in the wild. The current firmware version is known to be affected. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to address this security threat? Option A. Implement a temporary firewall rule to block all inbound VPN traffic until a permanent solution is found. Option B. Disable the VPN termination module entirely to eliminate the vulnerability. Option C. Monitor network traffic for signs of exploitation, but take no immediate action until the vulnerability impact is fully understood. Option D. Immediately apply the vendor-released security patch to the Cisco ASA firewall after testing it in a lab environment. The correct answer is D. Immediately apply the vendor-released security patch to the Cisco ASA firewall after testing it in a lab environment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security where a critical vulnerability is identified in a widely deployed Cisco ASA firewall. The professional is faced with balancing the immediate need to mitigate risk against potential operational disruption. The challenge lies in making an informed decision that prioritizes security without causing undue harm to business operations, all while adhering to established security, best practices, and potentially regulatory compliance requirements if applicable to the organization's industry. The pressure to act quickly is high, but a hasty, unverified solution could introduce new risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process. This includes thoroughly researching the vulnerability, understanding its exploitability and potential impact, and identifying all available mitigation strategies. The most effective strategy is to apply the vendor-provided patch or update after rigorous testing in a non-production environment. This ensures the fix addresses the vulnerability without introducing new issues. Documenting the entire process, including the risk assessment, testing results, and the decision to deploy, is crucial for auditability and future reference. This aligns with best practices for incident response and change management, ensuring a controlled and secure resolution. Incorrect approach is analysis. Ignoring the vulnerability entirely is a direct violation of security best practices and could lead to a severe breach, resulting in data loss, reputational damage, and potential regulatory fines. This demonstrates a failure in risk management and a disregard for the organization's security posture. Implementing a workaround without proper testing or vendor validation is risky. While it might seem like a quick fix, it could be incomplete, introduce new vulnerabilities, or conflict with other security configurations, potentially leading to unexpected system failures or security gaps. This approach bypasses essential quality assurance and risk assessment steps, disabling the affected service or feature entirely without a thorough impact assessment and a clear plan for restoration is an overreaction. While it might eliminate the immediate risk, it could cripple essential business functions, causing significant operational and financial damage. This demonstrates a lack of nuanced problem solving and an inability to balance security with business continuity. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by following a structured incident response and change management framework. This involves 1. Identification and assessment. Clearly understand the threat and its potential impact. 2. Containment and mitigation. Develop and test solutions. 3. Remediation. Implement the chosen solution in a controlled manner. 4. Verification and monitoring. Ensure the fix is effective and the system remains stable. 5. Documentation. Record all actions taken. This methodical approach ensures that decisions are data-driven, risks are managed, and the organization's security and operational integrity are maintained. Question 11. Assessment of the most appropriate method for configuring Cisco ASA firewall rules to grant necessary access to internal web servers for a specific group of remote users, while ensuring that other internal resources remain protected from unauthorized external access. Option A. Disable all inbound access control rules on the Cisco ASA to allow unrestricted access from all external sources to the internal network. Option B. Configure specific access control lists, ACL, on the Cisco ASA to permit traffic from the remote user's IP address range to the internal web server's IP addresses on the required web ports, e.g., TCP 80 and 443. Option C. Implement a single, broad access rule on the Cisco ASA that permits any source IP address to any internal destination IP address on any port. Option D. Rely solely on host-based firewalls on the internal web servers and configure no specific inbound access rules on the Cisco ASA. Correct answer is B. Configure specific access control lists, ACL, on the Cisco ASA to permit traffic from the remote user's IP address range to the internal web server's IP addresses on the required web ports, e.g., TCP 80 and 443. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of a business. The core tension lies between implementing a strict security policy that might hinder legitimate user access, and a more permissive policy that could expose the network to threats. The professional challenge is to identify the most effective and compliant method for managing access to sensitive internal resources, while adhering to the principles of least privilege and data protection, as mandated by general cybersecurity best practices and implied by the need for secure network operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the Cisco ASA's capabilities to implement granular access control lists, ACL, and potentially user authentication mechanisms. This aligns with the principle of least privilege, ensuring that only authorized users and devices can access specific internal resources. By defining precise rules based on source and destination IP addresses, ports, and protocol, the ASA can effectively segment the network and prevent unauthorized lateral movement. This method is professionally sound because it directly addresses the security requirements by limiting exposure and is a standard, well-documented practice for network security device configuration. It ensures that the ASA is configured to enforce security policies effectively, minimizing the attack surface. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling all inbound access control rules on the ASA is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action would effectively create a wide-open door to internal resources, violating fundamental security principles and potentially contravening data protection regulations that require reasonable security measures to be in place. It demonstrates a severe lack of professional judgment and a disregard for the organization's security posture. Implementing a single, overly broad access rule that permits traffic from any source to any internal destination is equally problematic. While it might seem like a simple solution to ensure access, it completely undermines the concept of network segmentation and the principle of least privilege. This approach creates an unacceptable security risk, exposing all internal systems to potential compromise and failing to meet any reasonable standard of due diligence in network security. It is a direct contravention of best practices for secure network device configuration. Relying solely on host-based firewalls without configuring the ASA's network-level access controls is also an insufficient approach. While host-based firewalls provide a layer of defense, they are not a substitute for robust network perimeter security. The ASA is designed to enforce network-wide security policies and control traffic flow between network segments. Neglecting its configuration leaves the network vulnerable to threats that could bypass individual host defenses, such as network reconnaissance or exploitation of vulnerabilities in services exposed to the broader network. This demonstrates a failure to utilize the deployed security infrastructure effectively and comprehensively. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such a scenario by first understanding the specific business requirements for access to internal resources. This involves consulting with stakeholders to identify which users, devices, and services need to communicate. Subsequently, they should consult the Cisco ASA's documentation and best practices for configuring access control. The decision-making process should prioritize the principle of least privilege, meaning granting only the minimum necessary permissions. This involves creating specific ACLs that permit only the required traffic flows. Regular review and auditing of these access rules are also crucial to ensure they remain relevant and effective. When faced with conflicting requirements, professionals must advocate for security best practices and explain the risks associated with less secure configurations, documenting all decisions and their justifications. Question 12. Comparative studies suggest that the implementation of new security policies on network devices can be fraught with unforeseen challenges. A network administrator is tasked with deploying a new access control list, ACL, on a Cisco ASA firewall to restrict access to a sensitive internal server from specific external IP addresses. The administrator has the new ACL commands ready, but is concerned about potential disruption to legitimate traffic and the overall stability of the network. What is the most professional and secure approach to implement this change? Option A. Rely on the default security posture of the ASA firewall and postpone the ACL implementation until a more significant security audit is scheduled. Option B. Test the new ACL configuration thoroughly in a dedicated staging environment that mirrors the production network. Develop a detailed rollback plan, and then deploy to production with careful monitoring. Option C. Directly apply the new ACL to the production ASA firewall during a scheduled maintenance window, assuming the commands are correct and have been reviewed. Option D. Implement the new ACL by making incremental changes on the live ASA firewall, observing the impact after each change, and reverting if issues arise. The correct answer is C. Directly apply the new ACL to the production ASA firewall during a scheduled maintenance window, assuming the commands are correct and have been reviewed. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security where a company needs to implement a new security policy that impacts existing network configurations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the immediate need for enhanced security with the potential for disruption to critical business operations. The pressure to deploy quickly, coupled with the complexity of ASA configurations, necessitates a methodical and well-informed approach to avoid unintended consequences. The need to adhere to specific security best practices, as often mandated by internal policies or industry standards, adds another layer of complexity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased deployment strategy, beginning with a thorough risk assessment and impact analysis. This ensures that potential vulnerabilities introduced by the new policy are identified and mitigated before full implementation. The use of a staging environment for testing the configuration changes is paramount. This allows for validation of functionality and security effectiveness without affecting the production network. Furthermore, a rollback plan is essential, providing a safety net in case of unforeseen issues. This methodical, risk-averse strategy aligns with professional security best practices and regulatory expectations for maintaining service availability and data integrity, as often implied by frameworks like NIST or ISO 27001, which are foundational to many security certifications. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the new security policy directly on the production ASA without prior testing in a staging environment represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the principle of least privilege and the importance of change management, potentially leading to network outages, data breaches, or non-compliance with security mandates. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adequately assess risk. Applying the new policy without a clear understanding of its impact on existing traffic flows and critical applications is another professionally unacceptable approach. This can result in the blocking of legitimate traffic, disrupting business operations, and potentially violating service-level agreements. It shows a disregard for the interconnectedness of network components and the business context in which the security policy operates. Attempting to implement the policy by making ad hoc changes directly on the live ASA, without a documented plan or a rollback strategy, is highly risky. This firefighting approach increases the likelihood of misconfigurations, errors, and an inability to quickly recover from problems. It violates fundamental principles of network administration and security deployment, which emphasize planning, documentation, and controlled execution. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach security policy implementation by first understanding the business requirements and the existing network architecture. A structured process involving planning, risk assessment, impact analysis, testing in a controlled environment, phased deployment, and a robust rollback plan is crucial. This systematic approach ensures that security enhancements are implemented effectively and efficiently, while minimizing disruption and maintaining compliance with relevant security standards and organizational policies. The decision-making process should prioritize risk mitigation, operational stability, and adherence to established security frameworks. Question 13. The efficiency study reveals that certain critical business applications are experiencing performance degradation due to network congestion. To address this, the IT team is considering implementing traffic shaping policies on the Cisco ASA firewall. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for improved application performance with maintaining a robust security posture? Option A. Aggressively prioritize all application traffic that consumes significant bandwidth, assuming that increased throughput will inherently improve security by allowing faster data transfer. Option B. Implement granular traffic shaping policies that prioritize critical application traffic while ensuring that security-related traffic, e.g., logging, threat intelligence updates, is not inadvertently deprioritized or blocked. Option C. Implement broad, unrestricted bandwidth allocation for all traffic types to eliminate congestion without specific prioritization rules. Option D. Temporarily disable certain security features on the ASA, such as deep packet inspection for non-critical traffic, to free up processing resources for application traffic. The correct answer is B. Implement granular traffic shaping policies that prioritize critical application traffic while ensuring that security-related traffic, e.g., logging, threat intelligence updates, is not inadvertently deprioritized or blocked. Explanation: the efficiency study reveals a need to optimize network traffic flow to enhance application performance and reduce latency for critical business operations. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for performance improvements with the long-term security posture of the network. A hasty implementation without considering the security implications could inadvertently create vulnerabilities or disrupt essential security services. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both effective and secure. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased, risk-assessed implementation of traffic shaping policies. This aligns with the principles of secure network design and management, ensuring that any changes are thoroughly tested in a controlled environment before full deployment. It also involves continuous monitoring and validation to confirm that performance gains are achieved without compromising security controls, such as intrusion prevention systems or access control lists. This methodical process minimizes the risk of unintended security breaches and ensures compliance with established security policies and best practices, which are implicitly expected in a professional IT environment governed by general IT security principles. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on aggressive traffic prioritization without considering the security implications of bypassing or deprioritizing security-related traffic, e.g., security logs, threat intelligence feeds, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach could lead to delayed detection of security incidents, making the organization more vulnerable to attacks. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing broad, unrestricted bandwidth allocation for all traffic types, fails to address the core efficiency issue and could inadvertently consume resources needed for security functions, thereby weakening the overall security posture. A third incorrect approach, which involves disabling security features to improve performance, is a direct violation of fundamental security principles and would likely contravene any organizational security policies or industry best practices, leading to severe compliance and ethical breaches. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment of any proposed network changes. This involves identifying potential security impacts, evaluating the likelihood and severity of those impacts, and developing mitigation strategies. The next step is to consider alternative solutions, weighing their performance benefits against their security risks. Pilot testing in a non-production environment is crucial to validate both performance improvements and security integrity. Finally, a robust monitoring and incident response plan should be in place to address any unforeseen issues that arise during or after implementation. Question 14. To address the challenge of efficiently and securely managing network access on a Cisco ASA firewall, a security administrator is tasked with creating an access control list, ACL, to govern traffic between two internal network segments. The primary goal is to allow specific application traffic while denying all other communication between these segments. Considering best practices for Cisco ASA configuration and network security principles, which of the following approaches represents the most effective and secure method for constructing this ACL? Option A. Begin the ACL with specific deny statements for known malicious traffic patterns, followed by a general permit statement for all other traffic, and then add specific permit rules for the application traffic. Option B. Implement a series of specific permit statements for the required application traffic, followed by a single, broad deny any statement at the end of the ACL to block all other traffic. Option C. Construct the ACL by first defining a general permit rule for all traffic between the two segments, and then adding more specific permit rules for the application traffic, overriding the initial general permit. Option D. Create a broad permit any statement at the beginning of the ACL to allow all traffic by default, and then add specific deny statements for any traffic that should be blocked. The correct answer is B. Implement a series of specific permit statements for the required application traffic, followed by a single, broad deny any statement at the end of the ACL to block all other traffic. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in network security, balancing the need for granular access control with the operational overhead of managing numerous security policies. Specifically, the question delves into the application of access control lists, ACL, on a Cisco ASA firewall, a core component of the 500-258 exam syllabus. The professional challenge lies in designing an ACL strategy that is both effective in enforcing security policies and manageable for ongoing administration. Overly complex or poorly structured ACLs can lead to misconfigurations, security gaps, and increased troubleshooting time. The correct approach emphasizes a structured and hierarchical application of ACLs, prioritizing more specific rules before general ones. This aligns with best practices for network security management and Cisco's recommended methodologies for ASA configuration. By placing more restrictive rules at the top of the ACL, the firewall evaluates these first, ensuring that critical traffic is handled according to the most stringent policies. This approach minimizes the risk of unintended access due to broader, less specific rules being matched prematurely. It also enhances readability and maintainability, making it easier for security administrators to understand and audit the firewall's behavior. This aligns with the general principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are foundational to secure network design. An incorrect approach would involve placing general, permissive rules before specific, restrictive ones. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it directly undermines the intended security posture. For instance, a broad permit any rule placed at the beginning of an ACL would effectively negate all subsequent, more specific deny or permit rules, creating a critical security vulnerability. This violates the principle of least privilege, potentially exposing sensitive network segments to unauthorized access. Ethically, it represents a failure to uphold the duty of care to protect the network and its data. Another incorrect approach might be to create an excessively long and unorganized ACL with redundant or overlapping rules. This increases the likelihood of misconfiguration and makes auditing difficult, potentially leading to accidental policy violations and security breaches. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence in network security management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the network's traffic flows and security requirements. For implementing any ACL, administrators should clearly define what traffic needs to be permitted and denied, and at what level of granularity. A top-down approach to ACL design, starting with the most critical and specific rules, is generally recommended. Regular auditing and review of ACLs are also crucial to ensure they remain effective and aligned with evolving security needs and organizational policies. Documentation of ACL logic and purpose is essential for team collaboration and future troubleshooting. Question 15. Operational review demonstrates that internal network segmentation is required between the finance, HR, and R&D departments to comply with data privacy regulations. The Cisco ASA firewall is the primary security device enforcing these boundaries. Which configuration approach best meets these requirements while maintaining operational integrity and auditability? Option A. Implement explicit access control lists, ACL, on the ASA to define and permit only necessary traffic flows between the finance, HR, and R&D security zones. Option B. Configure the ASA with broad, permit any rules between all internal security zones to simplify management. Option C. Utilize implicit deny rules across all internal interfaces without explicitly permitting any interdepartmental traffic. Option D. Rely solely on static routing configurations to control traffic flow between the internal departments, bypassing ASA security features. The correct answer is A. Implement explicit access control lists, ACL, on the ASA to define and permit only necessary traffic flows between the finance, HR, and R&D security zones. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security operations, balancing the need for granular access control with the operational overhead of managing complex security policies. The challenge lies in ensuring that while the ASA firewall is configured to enforce specific security zones and traffic flows, the configuration itself does not inadvertently create security gaps or become unmanageable, leading to potential policy bypass or misinterpretation. The professional challenge is to identify the most effective and compliant method for segmenting internal network traffic to meet security requirements without compromising operational efficiency or introducing new vulnerabilities. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the ASA's access control lists, ACL, to define explicit rules for traffic flow between different security zones. This method directly aligns with the principle of least privilege, ensuring that only explicitly permitted traffic can traverse between zones. By creating specific ACL entries for each required communication path, administrators can precisely control what traffic is allowed, denied, or inspected. This granular control is essential for meeting regulatory compliance requirements that often mandate strict segmentation of sensitive data and systems. Furthermore, well-defined ACLs are auditable and easier to troubleshoot, contributing to better operational management and security posture. This approach is best professional practice because it is a fundamental security control mechanism supported by the ASA's design, and is a widely accepted method for network segmentation and access control in security frameworks. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on implicit deny rules without explicitly permitting necessary traffic. While implicit deny is a fundamental security concept, a network where only implicit deny is in effect would block all traffic, rendering the network inoperable. This approach fails to enable legitimate business functions and is not a practical or compliant security solution. Another incorrect approach is to configure overly broad, permit any rules within security zones. This completely undermines the purpose of segmentation and access control, creating a flat network where traffic can flow freely, negating any security benefits of zone separation. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure, as it directly violates principles of data protection and network security, potentially exposing sensitive information to unauthorized access. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to manage access control solely through static routing configurations, without utilizing the ASA's security features. While routing dictates path selection, it does not inherently provide the deep packet inspection, stateful inspection, or granular access control that an ASA firewall is designed to offer. Relying only on routing would bypass the security enforcement capabilities of the ASA, leaving the network vulnerable and failing to meet security policy requirements. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach network security configuration by first understanding the specific regulatory requirements and the organization's security policies. This involves identifying critical assets, sensitive data, and the required communication paths between different network segments. The next step is to map these requirements to the capabilities of the security device, in this case, the Cisco ASA. The decision-making process should prioritize explicit, granular control using the most appropriate security features, such as ACLs for traffic filtering. Regular auditing and testing of configurations are crucial to ensure ongoing compliance and effectiveness. When faced with choices, professionals should always select the method that provides the highest level of security, is most auditable, and best aligns with established security, best practices, and regulatory mandates, while also considering operational manageability. Question 16. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of repeated, unsuccessful login attempts targeting the internal financial reporting server from an external IP address, followed by a successful login from a different, internal IP address shortly thereafter. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and professionally responsible initial response? Option A. Shut down all external network access to the internal network to prevent any further potential intrusion until a full network audit can be completed. Option B. Alert the IT security team to the external IP address and wait for their directive on how to proceed, without taking any immediate action on the server itself. Option C. Immediately isolate the financial reporting server from the network and initiate a forensic investigation to determine the scope and nature of the activity, while simultaneously reviewing internal access logs for the suspicious internal IP. Option D. Block the external IP address identified in the initial alerts and assume the subsequent internal login was legitimate, as no further alerts were generated. Correct answer is C. Immediately isolate the financial reporting server from the network and initiate a forensic investigation to determine the scope and nature of the activity, while simultaneously reviewing internal access logs for the suspicious internal IP. Explanation. The monitoring system demonstrates a critical security event. Unauthorized access attempts detected on a sensitive internal server. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires immediate and accurate assessment to prevent potential data breaches, system compromise, and regulatory noncompliance. The pressure to respond quickly must be balanced with the need for thorough investigation to avoid false positives or misinterpretations that could lead to unnecessary disruption or missed threats. The correct approach involves a multifaceted response that prioritizes containment, investigation, and documentation, aligning with best practices for incident response and security governance. This includes isolating the affected system to prevent further unauthorized access, initiating a detailed forensic analysis to understand the nature and scope of the intrusion, and meticulously documenting all actions taken and findings. This methodical approach ensures that the response is effective in mitigating the immediate threat, while also providing the necessary information for post-incident review, system hardening, and compliance reporting. Adhering to established incident response frameworks, such as those implicitly expected within a Cisco ASA Express security context, is paramount. This ensures that actions are taken in a structured, repeatable, and defensible manner, which is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and meeting potential audit requirements. An incorrect approach would be to immediately shut down the entire network without a targeted investigation. This is a regulatory and ethical failure, because it represents an overreaction that could cause significant business disruption and financial loss, potentially violating service-level agreements or contractual obligations. It also fails to gather critical forensic data that would be essential for understanding the attack vector and preventing future incidents. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the alerts, assuming they are false positives. This is a severe ethical and regulatory failure, as it demonstrates negligence and a disregard for the organization's security posture. Ignoring such alerts could lead to a successful breach, resulting in data loss, reputational damage, and significant penalties under data protection regulations. A third incorrect approach is to only focus on blocking the source IP address without understanding the full impact or method of the attack. This is a superficial response that fails to address potential lateral movement or other vulnerabilities exploited. It is professionally inadequate as it does not provide a comprehensive security solution and may leave the organization exposed to further threats. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a clear incident response plan that outlines roles, responsibilities, and escalation procedures. When an alert is triggered, the first step is to validate the alert's severity and potential impact. This is followed by containment measures, then a thorough investigation, and finally, remediation and post-incident analysis. Documentation at every stage is critical for accountability and continuous improvement. Question 17. Process analysis reveals that a new business-critical application requires access to external services. The IT security team is tasked with configuring the Cisco ASA firewall to permit this access. The team is considering several approaches to ensure both functionality and security. Which approach best aligns with robust security practices and regulatory expectations for network access control? Option A. Configure-specific, granular firewall rules that allow only the necessary ports and protocols identified through a thorough risk assessment and business justification, with a deny by default policy for all other traffic. Option B. Implement a permit-all rule for the application source IP address to ensure unrestricted access and immediate functionality. Option C. Open all inbound and outbound ports and protocols on the ASA for the application subnet, assuming the application itself is secure. Option D. Create a broad permit-any rule for the application's traffic and rely on the application vendor's security assurances to mitigate risks. The correct answer is B. Implement a permit-all rule for the application source IP address to ensure unrestricted access and immediate functionality. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of a business. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying security policies in a dynamic environment where new applications and services are constantly being introduced. The pressure to enable business functions quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise security. Professionals must navigate this tension by understanding the underlying security principles and the specific risks associated with each decision. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and a structured process for evaluating and approving new application deployments. This aligns with best practices in information security management, which emphasize a proactive and systematic approach to security. Specifically, it adheres to the principles of least privilege and defense in depth by ensuring that only necessary ports and protocols are opened after a security review. This methodical process minimizes the attack surface and reduces the likelihood of unauthorized access or data breaches. It also supports compliance with security frameworks that mandate change control and risk management procedures. Incorrect approaches analysis. Opening all ports and protocols without a security review is a direct violation of fundamental security principles. It creates an unnecessarily large attack surface, making the network vulnerable to a wide range of threats. This approach demonstrates a failure to implement basic security controls and a disregard for risk management, which could lead to regulatory penalties if a breach occurs. Implementing a deny by default policy, but allowing exceptions without a documented approval process is also problematic. While deny by default is a good starting point, the lack of a formal exception process means that security decisions are made ad hoc, potentially based on convenience rather than a proper risk evaluation. This can lead to inconsistent security postures and the inadvertent introduction of vulnerabilities. Relying solely on the application vendor's security claims without independent verification is insufficient. Vendors may not fully disclose all potential vulnerabilities or may have different security standards than the organization's own requirements. This approach outsources critical security due diligence, which is a failure of professional responsibility and could lead to the deployment of insecure applications. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that prioritizes security while enabling business operations. This involves 1. Understanding the business need. Clearly define why the new application or service is required. 2. Threat modeling. Identify potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the application and its network interactions. 3. Risk assessment. Evaluate the likelihood and impact of identified threats. 4. Policy adherence. Determine how the proposed deployment aligns with existing security policies and regulatory requirements. 5. Control implementation. Define and implement appropriate security controls, such as firewall rules, intrusion prevention systems, and access controls. 6. Documentation and approval. Document the entire process, including the risk assessment and the rationale for any security decisions, and obtain formal approval from relevant stakeholders. 7. Monitoring and review. Continuously monitor the application's security posture and periodically review its configuration and access. Question 18. Consider a scenario where a new cloud-based customer relationship management (CRM) service is being integrated into the corporate network. The business unit is eager to deploy this service rapidly to improve sales operations. The IT security team is tasked with ensuring the integration is secure using the existing Cisco ASA firewall. Which of the following approaches best aligns with secure integration practices and regulatory expectations for network security? Option A. Immediately deploy the CRM service, allowing all inbound and outbound traffic related to the service by default, and address any security concerns that arise after the service is operational. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the CRM service's data handling and communication protocols, and configure the Cisco ASA firewall with specific access control lists, ACL, intrusion prevention policies, and potentially VPN tunnels to enforce security controls aligned with the assessment and organizational security policy. Option C. Configure the Cisco ASA firewall using only the default security settings provided by the vendor, assuming they offer adequate protection for a cloud-based service. Option D. Implement only basic firewall rules on the Cisco ASA to allow the necessary ports and protocols for the CRM service to function, without a detailed security review of the service itself. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the CRM service's data handling and communication protocols, and configure the Cisco ASA firewall with specific access control lists, ACL, intrusion prevention policies, and potentially VPN tunnels to enforce security controls aligned with the assessment and organizational security policy. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security where a new service needs to be integrated, potentially exposing the organization to new threats. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for business functionality with the imperative to maintain a secure network posture, adhering to established security policies and regulatory requirements. The pressure to deploy quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise security, making a thorough risk assessment and adherence to policy paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic process of risk assessment and policy enforcement. This aligns with best practices in information security management, which emphasize a proactive rather than reactive stance. By identifying potential vulnerabilities associated with the new service and evaluating them against the existing security policy, the security team can determine appropriate mitigation strategies. This might include configuring the Cisco ASA firewall to implement specific access control lists, ACL, intrusion prevention system, IPS, policies, or VPN configurations tailored to the service's requirements and the organization's risk tolerance. This methodical approach ensures that security controls are implemented based on identified risks and in compliance with the organization's security framework, which is often implicitly or explicitly guided by regulatory expectations for data protection and network integrity. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the service without a formal risk assessment and policy review is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses critical security governance processes designed to protect sensitive data and maintain network availability. This approach creates an unknown security posture, leaving the organization vulnerable to exploits that could lead to data breaches, service disruption, and non-compliance with data protection regulations. Deploying the service with only basic firewall rules without considering the specific security implications of the new application or service is also problematic. Basic rules might allow traffic. They may not adequately address application layer threats or specific vulnerabilities associated with the service. This can lead to a false sense of security and expose the network to sophisticated attacks that bypass simple port and protocol filtering. Relying solely on vendor default security settings for the Cisco ASA firewall is a critical error. Default configurations are often designed for ease of initial setup and may not reflect the specific security needs or risk profile of the organization. They can also contain known vulnerabilities or overly permissive settings that are unsuitable for a production environment, leading to significant security gaps and potential noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based security approach. This involves understanding the business need, identifying the associated risks, evaluating those risks against the organization's security policies and regulatory obligations, and then implementing appropriate security controls. When introducing new services or technologies, a formal change management process that includes a security review and risk assessment is essential. This process should involve collaboration between IT operations, security teams, and business stakeholders to ensure that security is integrated from the outset, rather than being an afterthought. The Cisco ASA firewall's capabilities should be leveraged to enforce these risk mitigation strategies effectively. Question 19. The investigation demonstrates that a network administrator is implementing a new security policy on a Cisco ASA firewall to restrict access to a critical internal financial application. The primary objective is to prevent unauthorized access while ensuring that authorized users and essential system services can still communicate with the application. Which of the following configuration approaches best aligns with the principle of least privilege and robust network security practices for this scenario? Option A. Block all inbound traffic to the financial application server by default on the Cisco ASA, and then create specific rules to allow access only for known user groups, without considering necessary system service communication. Option B. Configure access control lists, ACL, on the Cisco ASA to explicitly permit only the specific source IP addresses, protocols, and destination ports that are required for authorized access to the financial application, while implicitly denying all other traffic. Option C. Implement a broad permit any rule on the Cisco ASA for the interface connected to the financial application as a temporary measure to ensure immediate availability, with plans to refine it later. Option D. Rely solely on the financial application's built-in user authentication and authorization mechanisms to control access, without implementing any network-level access controls on the Cisco ASA. The correct answer is B. Configure access control lists, ACL, on the Cisco ASA to explicitly permit only the specific source IP addresses, protocols, and destination ports that are required for authorized access to the financial application, while implicitly denying all other traffic. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a network administrator is tasked with implementing a new security policy on a Cisco ASA firewall to restrict access to a sensitive internal application. The challenge lies in ensuring that the policy is both effective in its security objective and compliant with the principle of least privilege, a fundamental tenet of secure network design, and often implicitly or explicitly required by security frameworks. Misconfiguration could lead to either an overly restrictive policy that disrupts legitimate business operations or an insufficiently restrictive policy that exposes the application to unauthorized access, both of which carry significant operational and security risks. The correct approach involves a granular and precise configuration of access control lists, ACL, on the Cisco ASA. This method directly applies the principle of least privilege by explicitly defining which source IP addresses, protocols, and ports are permitted to access the target application. This ensures that only authorized traffic can reach the application, minimizing the attack surface. This aligns with best practices in network security and is a core competency expected for professionals managing Cisco ASA devices, as it directly addresses the need for controlled and secure network access. An incorrect approach would be to implement a broad permit any rule as a temporary measure to ensure application availability. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure because it completely bypasses the security controls, exposing the application to all network traffic and violating the principle of least privilege. It creates a significant security vulnerability that could lead to data breaches or unauthorized access, directly contravening the objective of securing the application. Another incorrect approach would be to block all traffic to the application by default, and then only permit specific user groups without considering the underlying network infrastructure or the specific services the application relies on. This could lead to unintended service disruptions for legitimate users and systems that require access to the application for its proper functioning. While it leans towards security, it fails to achieve a balance between security and operational necessity, potentially violating service-level agreements or business continuity requirements. A third incorrect approach would be to rely solely on application-level authentication without implementing network-level access controls. While application-level security is important, it should be complemented by network security measures. Failing to implement network-level controls means that even if the application's authentication mechanism is compromised, the attacker would still have network access to the application's interface, increasing the risk of exploitation. This represents a failure to implement defense in depth, a widely accepted security principle. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough understanding of the application's requirements, including its dependencies and the legitimate users or systems that need access. This should be followed by a risk assessment to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities. Based on this assessment, a security policy should be designed that adheres to the principle of least privilege, using granular controls like ACLs on the Cisco ASA. The configuration should then be meticulously tested in a non-production environment before deployment, and ongoing monitoring and auditing should be implemented to ensure continued effectiveness and compliance. Question 20. Upon reviewing security advisories, a critical vulnerability has been identified in the Cisco ASA firewall software currently protecting the organization's primary network segment. The advisory indicates that the vulnerability is actively being exploited in the wild. The IT security team has obtained the necessary patch, but is concerned about potential service disruptions if the patch is applied directly to the production environment without thorough validation. What is the most prudent course of action to mitigate this immediate security threat while minimizing operational risk? Option A. Implement a phased rollout of the patch, beginning with a small group of non-critical network segments to test for compatibility and stability before a full deployment. Option B. Deploy the patch immediately to all production Cisco ASA firewalls to close the vulnerability as quickly as possible. Option C. Roll back the Cisco ASA firewall configuration to the last known stable state without applying the patch, assuming this will revert any potential compromise. Option D. Monitor network traffic for any signs of exploitation and delay patching until a more stable version of the software is released. The correct answer is B. Deploy the patch immediately to all production Cisco ASA firewalls to close the vulnerability as quickly as possible. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security where a critical vulnerability is discovered in a widely deployed Cisco ASA firewall. The professional is tasked with mitigating the risk while ensuring minimal disruption to business operations. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of patching a known exploit with the potential for service outages caused by an untested or improperly applied update. The need for rapid decision-making under pressure, without compromising security or operational stability, is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased deployment strategy, starting with a pilot group. This aligns with best practices for change management and risk mitigation in IT security. By testing the patch on a limited, non-critical segment of the network, the security professional can validate its effectiveness against the vulnerability and identify any unintended side effects or compatibility issues before a full-scale rollout. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of widespread service disruption, which could have significant financial and reputational consequences for the organization. It also allows for a controlled rollback if issues are detected, ensuring business continuity. This aligns with general IT security principles of risk management and operational resilience, which are implicitly expected in professional practice, even if not explicitly detailed in a single regulatory document for this specific exam. Incorrect approach is analysis. Applying the patch immediately to all production systems without prior testing is a high-risk strategy. This approach disregards the potential for unforeseen issues, such as application incompatibilities or performance degradation, which could lead to significant downtime and business impact. This failure to conduct due diligence and risk assessment is professionally unsound and could be seen as a breach of duty of care. Rolling back the entire firewall configuration to a previous stable state without verifying if the vulnerability is still present or if the rollback addresses the root cause is also problematic. While it might restore immediate functionality, it leaves the network exposed to the known exploit if the rollback doesn't fully remediate the vulnerability. This reactive measure without a proactive security assessment is not a sustainable or responsible security practice. Ignoring the vulnerability and hoping it is not exploited is the most negligent approach. This demonstrates a complete disregard for known security risks and a failure to uphold the professional responsibility to protect the organization's assets and data. Such inaction would be a severe ethical and professional failing, potentially leading to severe security breaches and regulatory noncompliance if specific data protection laws were applicable. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to security incident response and change management. This involves 1. Assessment. Understand the vulnerability and its impact. 2. Planning. Develop a mitigation strategy that balances security and operational needs. 3. Testing. Validate any proposed solution in a controlled environment. 4. Deployment. Implement the solution in a phased manner starting with less critical systems. 5. Monitoring. Continuously observe the network for any adverse effects. 6. Documentation. Record all actions taken and their outcomes. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and business continuity is maintained.